Hello and welcome to Business Sense. I'm Ralph Rivas. Happy International Women's Day, everyone. Now, for the entire month of March, we're featuring an all women lineup of guests to celebrate trailblazing women in various industries. Now, for today's episode, we have Sanofi Vaccines General Manager for the Philippines, Kashmira Prabhu. So, Kashmira, tell us about the journey to get to this position and if there's a word that could encapsulate the experience climbing the corporate ladder, breaking various glass ceilings, perhaps. How would you describe it?
Well, first of all, I think Ralph, I would say that my experience has been very satisfying, and I not at the cost of sounding humble, but I don't think I have still reached that position that I can say that I have actually broken all glass ceilings. I'm very happy with the journey that I had my own independent learning journey while I've traveled here, but I know that I have to travel much more. In the future.
Yeah, so the pandemic is really a bummer, right? And you're still in India and you haven't been here to the Philippines, right? So anything that you're looking forward to, any places that you want to visit, how soon can you get here and let us and we can meet in person?
Of course, I think I can't wait to be there in the Philippines. What I have done is, yes, I have not visited Philippines before. I have only visited it virtually, and I know that it's an archipelago of more than 7,000 islands, which makes it so breathtakingly beautiful. And my interaction still now with my Philippines team, with our colleagues, only further convinces me that I should be there as early as possible. It's beautiful. The people are loving, kind. I don't have more words to express right now.
Now, Kashmira, there are lots of women leaders right now, but globally the gap is still wide. I mean, lots of studies have proven this already. Statistics have shown it that men still dominate the boardroom. So I want to ask you this: what does it take to level the playing field and address the gender biases in play?
I think we just have to take a step back and look at it maybe more holistically. Uh, the first that I think companies can do is believe in why diversity makes us smarter, because I think it begins from that belief that we have of how encouraging a more diverse and inclusive environment ensures whether there's more creativity, better influence on decisions, more innovation. And of course, there are many statistics to tell us why having a more diverse and inclusive environment uh, further propels business results. If that commitment is made by the companies, once you believe in it, then the next step is about setting that commitment into action. You can't let the ball drop between the spirit, intent, and the action. And here it talks about a clear commitment that we should have on why and how we will ensure that we have a very diverse and inclusive environment. Here I want to make a specific mention. It's not just about gender, but it's also about diversity of experiences, age, different cultures, all these other elements that can really help to make the workplace thrive. After we have the commitment, the tone at the top has to be clear and consistent. Once we have done that, I think the next step is about ensuring that the workplace has policies and processes in place to ensure that we can implement those commitments. And the last is, of course, to ensure that our employees also, at our workplace, our peers, colleagues, all are sensitized to why diversity is important. There has to be an internal belief before we actually set the ball in action. And specifically when it comes to gender, at least my experience tells me that there are three or four areas that we need to work on. One, I would say, is the lack of adequate role models, which means that has to be some deliberate action to ensure that we can encourage more, gender equal representation at different levels of leadership in the organization. Because sometimes it's just the lack of having adequate role models which sets us away from maybe aspiring to achieve much more than possibly what we do. The second, I would say, is about the lack of confidence. And here I think, we have our kind to also blame. When I say lack of confidence, it's about lack of confidence for pitching yourself for jobs that you feel you might not be technically ready. And this, I think, statistics have shown that men and women, express different levels of readiness when they pitch themselves for higher responsibilities. The third, which I have seen can go a long way, is the presence of allies, sponsors in the system who can act like your sounding board. These need not necessarily be people who, for lack of another word, push you in the system, but at least they act as sounding boards to give you feedback and to provide you with the right experiences at the right time in your career path. Of course, provided you're willing to, and you aspire to plan a particular, career in the organization. Yeah, Ralph.
Mm. Now, my question is about hiring. So, how do you ensure a diverse workplace? Do you set a certain number to allot to a particular race or a particular gender for a particular position? So, and let me push that further because the argument of those, especially men, leaders, would argue that why put those quotas when there are and just set it purely on qualifications, perhaps. Like, may the best or best woman win. Why not stick to that?
So, Ralph, it depends on what lens we see it from. If we see it from the lens of saying that there is a mandate or a quota, I don't think even anyone, whether it's men or women or anybody in the organization, wants to be, at the what you say, for lack of another word, wants to be part of a decision made based on quotas that have been assigned in the system. So it depends what lens we look at it from. Is it equality or is it equity? You mentioned a good point about why can't we just leave it at qualifications. Of course, if you look at just qualifications, you have equal number of women graduating from universities, equal number, many times even taking up higher, qualifications. So it's not always. It's just that sometimes as the level playing field is not available. It could be because of differences that are set right at the entry level when we begin work. For example, you mentioned on hiring. When we hire, are we very clear that our hiring processes are ensuring that there is no bias during the selection? So that's the first question. For example, in Sanofi, we really profess that we have, a diverse panel during hiring to ensure that we can reduce any possibility of an unconscious bias. It's also about whether organizations have trained and sensitized employees on what kind of questions are important when you evaluate during recruitment. Is it about just experience or is it about the potential for an individual to deliver in that role? So I would say that yes, it can be a half glass full and half empty. When the numbers are very skewed, in the system and they don't represent our society, the numbers that exist in our society, it just means that somewhere there is an inherent conscious or unconscious bias which is working, against a level playing field for all employees. And lastly, I don't want to miss the point that when we talk about meritocracy, it doesn't speak. I don't think we intend to say that you just choose the women over the men. That would be a wrong argument to make. And I'm sure no organization wants to do that. Eventually, everyone wants to hire and groom talent for future. The point is, can we have a process which evaluates both all the candidates, irrespective of gender, without a lens put on gender or on any other element that can cause bias, and then say you know let the best person win. And sometimes if you have a big skew in the figures, maybe it just means that if all things are equal, you really need to have a deliberate action to ensure that the woman is given that opportunity. that is
Mhm.
that is when we can talk about really forging a gender equal world.
Mm. Now, lots of great points that you mentioned there, but let's talk about the healthcare industry. Lots of studies. I read up some of them, but in the West, for instance, studies have shown that over 60% of workers in the healthcare industry are women, yet only 15% are in executive positions. Do you also see this trend in Asia? And what will it take to bring that up to at least 50-50?
Like I mentioned earlier, I think there has to be deliberate action to ensure that right from an early stage, of the career development, there are the right experiences that are instilled during your career planning. And that of course depends upon the varied level of opportunities available, the willingness to really pitch yourself for different roles. But that talks about policies and talent development process that exists in the organization to ensure that that number stays across different levels. So I would say that apart from that, the few things that I mentioned earlier, talking about the right sponsors and mentors to ensure that you get the best out of your employees and you really develop that talent for future, can go another way in ensuring consistency in the representation across leadership.
Mhm. Now, you're talking about role models. I want to ask you, who's your role model, and what did you learn from them?
Okay, so it depends from what perspective we see it. I can tell you that I am a pharmacist by profession, and my sheer interest in pharmaceuticals was because of my role model, my father, who was a pharmaceutical entrepreneur. So I can say I started in the industry early, as a medical representative, and my entire journey, he has been my primary role model. Apart from that, if we talk about women in business, one person I have looked up to and seen, of course, only from a distance, has been Indra Nui. You would have heard of her as a business leader, very, very connected, grounded, and I've taken, I really followed her journey and taken inspiration from her. But that's not been within Sanofi. Within Sanofi, we have had quite a few business leaders who have been my mentors, and I can tell you they have not necessarily been women. I can say, and I'm really, really proud that in Sanofi we have such a cohesive and inclusive environment, right from my peers, from my co-workers, my managers, some real excellent human beings who every bit of the way have been a good sounding board for me and given me the right feedback at the right time. And I would say have really trusted me that I can deliver.
Mhm. Now, what's your advice to young women out there aspiring to get where you are right now?
I think first, I know it sounds cliched, but the first is that you have to believe in yourself and what you want to do. You have to plan. You shouldn't let things just happen by default. Sometimes I just think it's the way we are wired. We let things happen by default many times in life. It has to be deliberate and action if we are willing and if we really aspire. You can have different individuals can have different aspirations in life. It doesn't mean that you can be counted as successful only if you're doing well professionally, in the professional workplace. But having said that, if you really aspire, you have to plan early, and you have to believe in yourself, and you have to raise your voice about your aspirations. Because frankly, if you don't have confidence in yourself, you can't expect others to have that. I'm not saying all women are diffident. That's not what I'm saying. But it just means that sometimes you have to really how could I say it? You need to speak up for what you believe in and what you want to do.
Mm. Now, let's talk about your big move here in the Philippines. Tell us about your plans, targets, priority projects. Just a hint. Give me something, Kashmira. I know lots of executives are a little hesitant in disclosing their plans, but give me a little something.
Okay, so first of all, I think at Sanofi Philippines, we believe in a 360-degree approach, a holistic approach in providing for healthcare needs. And as an organization, you would be aware that we are present with vaccines, where we believe in promoting, vaccines at every step of the life course. We have products that provide, healthcare solutions for chronic illnesses, as well as for our day-to-day consumer, healthcare needs. Having said that, specifically in vaccines, I would say that over the years, our focus has been to improve the vaccine confidence and the vaccine coverage rate in the country, even before the pandemic. Of course, we witnessed some real unprecedented times during the pandemic, and that possibly put us back in terms of our objective of improving the vaccine coverage rate. Uh, Vaccinations, especially childhood immunization, got impacted severely due to the lockdowns, due to restrictions in mobility, and it has taken us a while to, as we see now, with more of the population getting vaccinated. I think almost 63 million Filipinos already vaccinated now. And as this vaccination increases and life comes back to normalcy, our core belief is that you need to be healthy to drive a very sustainable growing economy. And the pandemic has shown us how being healthy and safe is very important in this direction. So here we would want to really emphasize and increase the our efforts to drive a better vaccination coverage in the country. And this we plan to do, working with our stakeholders, working with the different authorities in raising awareness, in also improving on capacity building programs, and of course ensuring adequate supply of vaccines. So in
Mm,
terms of an overall objective, I would say this is the big one. And secondly, I also see that Philippines has a wonderful mature digital ecosystem, very high on maturity in terms of adoption of digital technology in our everyday life, which means that there is a lot of scope for bringing transformation in the way we work, in the way we connect with each other, the way we connect with our stakeholders, and we can really bring in a lot of more innovative solutions.
mm. Now, let me just bring the discussion back to vaccine hesitancy. because that's been a really, really big issue here in the Philippines, despite the pandemic. People, friends dying. There's still a lot of people who don't want to get vaccinated. And let me just share you this. I know people that have received their first dose and they think that's it. They don't want to go for the second dose of the COVID vaccine. Now, how do we address vaccine hesitancy and disinformation involved in regarding vaccines? How do we address that?
Yeah. I think it this calls for a real whole of society approach. I would say it's not no one person or no one institution can improve this belief. Everyone has to work together and everyone has a role to play. For example, our public figures, leaders, key leaders who have an influence, they need to play a role in influencing the mindsets positively for immunization. We have enough proof points during the pandemic now, to give us the confidence that vaccinations are going to work, in a larger population. So that's the first, I would say. Apart from that, there is a lot of work to be done by even the ensuring that there is clear comprehensible communication from the medical fraternity, from that talks about investment of time and effort by our doctors, by the medical stakeholders who have a direct influence, who understand uh, the science. Then it talks about vaccine. Maybe we can talk about the pharma industry and not just necessarily companies who are involved in vaccines, because it's about ensuring healthy population, and vaccines has a key role to play when we talk about protection, and especially in vaccine preventable diseases. So it would also call upon companies like us to ensure that there is clear, comprehensible communication with the public and with the stakeholders who influence vaccination. Apart from that, I would say, given that Philippines has such a high social media usage, it can be a boon and bane. I say a boon because that's one way that we can really instill I would say, the right messages, the correct information, the right information in the system, so that people can take a right decision. And I say a bane because sometimes it can also be a source of misinformation. So at the end, it also means that the public at large would need to really, work towards uh, validating the information they have, and ensuring that then they're taking the right decision, not just for themselves, but their families and their near and dear ones. For example, I can just give you an example of Team Bakunanai, which is an online platform of, as the name calls it, it's vaccine moms. It's an online
Mm,
platform of more than 10,000 mothers, which is of course run by the Asian Parent. And this platform is something that we have collaborated with the Asian Parent, because we believe that we need to have positive discussions in the society. And we have these vaccine moms who discuss with qualified professionals, with doctors, on the needs, on the requirements, on their doubts, queries, and on how they can use vaccines and take other measures to ensure that children are protected, our future is protected from vaccine preventable diseases.
mm. And finally, with the easing of restrictions, but the virus is still here. Coronavirus is still here. What's your outlook?
I think yes, the coronavirus is here. It might stay. It might become endemic, as is what is being, today professed by most parts of the world. But we have to. It's more about not combating it anymore. I think it's about living with the virus. It's about knowing how to manage your day to day life today. We know that with the pandemic, with this virus, it's possible it will continue to mutate. There could be newer variants. So we also have to look at ways of continuing business and continuing our daily life, living with the virus. So that's what I would say. That's where, in terms of the outlook, there are many positives that this pandemic has taught us. There has been, the power of collaboration that we have seen within the industry, outside the industry. There has been a level of self empowerment, whether it's patients, whether it's us in society, across the value chain. I think these are a good, I would say, the good benefits of the pandemic, which should stay. And I'm an eternal optimist, like I said. So I think I would rather believe that we have a long term advantage uh, post the, I would say, the persistence, the sheer resilience that we have shown during the pandemic. So we have a long term advantage.
Mm. Now, really good discussion here, and I really appreciate your optimism. Thanks so much, Sanofi Vaccines General Manager for the Philippines, Kashmira Prabhu. This has been another episode of Business Sense. I'm Ralph Rivas. Thanks for watching.